Hi everybody, it's Tessa again with more talk about sleep. And it's late, so hopefully you're not even really watching this. Um, Hopefully you can maybe catch it later. Um, but tonight we're talking about the do's and don'ts for getting good sleep. Because we've already, hi Sarah, we've already talked about why it's so important. I mean, like I scared myself into really trying. So um, I researched this a lot today, and what I found was most people, most experts, most doctors agree on how we sleep better. And so I'm only going to go over some of those things really briefly for anybody who'd rather learn it quickly from a video than read. I'm a reader, as you can see, and I like to research. I don't always really watch it presented in videos, but I want to go over it just because I think it's important. So, hi Bryn, how are you? Um, okay, the basics that really seems like pretty much everybody agrees on are keeping a schedule. So, recommending when at all possible to go to bed and get up at the same time every day, even on the weekends. And so, what most of them agree on is that if you kind of have a sleep debt that you're trying to make up, it's still probably not a good idea to sleep in. And that's not across the board because there are some who say that, but most said it's actually better to take a little short nap, no more than 25 minutes, and no later than early afternoon to try to make up for that if you can. So that's not across the board, but the part that is to go to bed and get up at the same time. And next is having a routine. So it's kind of funny because I could look at every single one of these tips and they make me think back to when I had babies and I was trying to get the babies to go to bed. And so people, when they wake up well rested, they say, "Oh, I slept like a baby." Well, that's not really true because they mean they just waking up feeling like they have lots of energy, which babies do for a little while and they go back to sleep. But the healthy adult sleep and healthy baby sleep are totally different. The cycle's different and the amount of sleep. Babies get, I think, about 16 hours in the 24-hour, and we don't need that much as adults. But that feeling of sleeping well and secure and safe like a baby, that's what they mean. So it's interesting because all of these tips pretty much are the things that I tried to do and we try to do when we put the babies to bed. So really, instead of sleeping like a baby, we should kind of be putting ourselves to bed like we were babies. So having a routine, a bedtime routine. What did we do? We had the bath and we got the comfy pajamas and we always made sure their environment was nice and warm, and we put a lot of thought into that. And we read a book and we cuddled and I love you, and we had a routine. We brushed the teeth, all that kind of stuff. And even to this day, these boys of mine still, I may not be tucking, well, yeah, I actually, I do try to tuck them in. Maybe I'm not putting them to bed. They handle their own routine, but they still have a routine. And somewhere along the way, my routine pretty much got boiled down to, all right, make sure the doors are locked, lights are off, brush my teeth, usually put pajamas on and crawl in the covers, and then from there, who knows? It's not always the same. If I'm doing well, I'm gonna go right to sleep. If not, I'm gonna get on my phone. I mean, I might haul my computer. I mean, who knows? It's just I might literally bring a stack of like work in. It's crazy. That has become the routine. Okay, so back to the list. You have this schedule, the routine, the environment is very important. So the environment can include things like a choice of whether of keeping it dark, The temperature, they say between 62, 68, maybe even 70 degrees is the optimal. You want to make sure that your bed is comfortable for you, that your pillow's comfortable, your bedding is comfortable, that you're wearing something that's comfortable or you're not wearing, whatever is best for you. But most of them agree that definitely dark is better, that you don't want to have even the lights from an alarm clock. They recommend having a dimmer. Some say don't even have any electronics in there. Some say have electronics because you might have an app or a tool that helps you with sleep, but you want to make sure to not have light from there. And you definitely don't want it in your hand or under your pillow or anything like that. So they say just you want to make sure that the bedroom is pretty much just for sleeping and for other bedroom activities. So you don't want to be doing a lot else in the bedroom because that's not conducive to sleep. So then next that people seem to agree on are the things that you maybe don't want to eat or you want to eat or drink. And I already did a video on that, so we can refer back to that. But it's obviously not having caffeine too much before. Then there's exercise. They say you definitely want to have some exercise in your day. That's going to help you sleep better, but you don't want it to be too much before you go to bed. Maybe some yoga or light stretching before bed would be okay. And then as far as the method, when you're actually trying to fall asleep, you want to clear your mind. You want to relax. And there's lots of different ideas for how to do that. That's kind of a thing that's personalized for people. Some people could meditate. Even, some people, for me, I'm pretty lucky. I close my eyes and go. So there's not a lot of time for any of that, but there are a lot of techniques. There's, some people read, some people color, some people, books on audio, they read books, soft music, whatever's relaxing to you. Some of the more interesting ideas I heard were even just like curling your toes. Curling and loosening your toes was one thing. So anything that helps you relax. Another one I thought was kind of funny was laying on your left side, holding your finger on your right nostril and breathing in and out from your left nostril, not your right, just your left. It's a yoga thing, apparently. I'd never really heard of that. Another cool suggestion I thought was kind of neat was to create a trigger for sleep. So one of the suggestions was like like when you know you're about to go to sleep, you do the trigger, and the one suggested was just like rubbing right here. And that if you do that right before you know that you're going to go to sleep, you can actually use that to help yourself go to sleep. And it reminded me of something I read with training the dogs, that if you give them the command that you want them to do something, like right before they're about to do something, and I used to do it for like going potty, that it kind of reminded me of that it was a trigger that would help eventually. And so then the last thing that everybody seemed to agree on was if you wake up in the middle of the night, that you don't really want to stress over going back to sleep. You want to think about relaxation is the goal, not sleep. Because if you just keep thinking, I gotta sleep, I only have so many hours, it stresses you out and thereby makes it harder to go to sleep. So you want to think about it like, my goal is to relax. And if you really are having a hard time, they say after about 15 minutes, that it's probably beneficial to get up and do something else calm and quiet until you're feeling tired enough to go to sleep. And feeling tired is the goal. You want to be able to feel sleepy when you're going to sleep. If you start feeling sleepy too much earlier in the evening, like maybe you're watching TV, they say to get up and do something so that you don't fall asleep too early. So anyway, those were some of the tips shared. And then I wanted to add, oh wait, I had another, this was an interesting weird tip, and I had never heard it before. I read that actually that you could kind of like, what is it, reverse psychology, like a sleep paradox, where you'd actually tell yourself, you'd try to stay awake, you'd actually hold your eyes open and say, I don't want to go to sleep. And then supposedly that can help you, So just keep in mind, this is not necessarily advice I'm telling you to do. I'm saying, this is what I've learned from my research. This is what people agreed on. And here's some weird tips that might work for you. And then one was like thinking, and I could see this working for me because I think I'd fall asleep right away doing it. It was saying to, you could relive your day. So chronologically go through the day in your mind with your eyes closed from when you woke up and see how far you get. Or the opposite would be to do the same thing chronologically, but rewind it. So try to think of it in reverse. That would definitely put me to sleep. I'm almost positive of it. When I try to think of things or practice something in my head, it never works because I just fall asleep. Okay, so those are a lot of the tips that people agree on, the experts. And keep in mind, I'm not an expert. So one more thing I want to say about that before I have some of my own tips that I actually kind of came up with is this. There are real sleep problems. There's insomnia. There's narcolepsy. There's sleep apnea. There's a lot of real problems which would require medical help. They require the help from an expert, not me, not some chick who just likes to research and stay up late and talking about it on Facebook. So if you are having problems often or ongoing, you need to see a doctor. I mean, I think that is a critical first step because we have established how important sleep is. So, I mean, all these things are great advice. And what's kind of funny is when I was reading just general sleep tips, and then I was kind of digging a little deeper and actually reading into some of the ways they treat insomnia with, behavioral therapy. It was interesting because it's pretty much the same things. And if you notice, I haven't talked about medicine because that's not something everybody agrees on. So I kind of avoided that on purpose because I don't feel that I have the expertise or credentials to recommend something like that. Okay, so the things I came up with on my own, they're actually not ways to help improve your sleep. What they are ways that you approach making changes that you want to make in your life. So, and it was kind of funny because as I was doing this and writing them down, I wasn't reading these in any article related to sleep, but these are what I kept thinking of and then writing down, and all of a sudden I had a list of things that I had implemented when I was trying to lose weight and eat better. So it's kind of interesting. And so the first one is that you actually have to kind of decide and you have to commit to making a change. You have to know if this is something that you're taking seriously, which I am. This is going to be hard for me to change my sleep habits, but I've realized I need more, and it's important. It's definitely important, so I need to make the changes. So if you're right there with me, pay attention to this because this is a process that I know works for changing habits, because that's really what you're doing. I'm 46 years old. I've been sleeping wrong, for a while. So it is going to be tough. So you need to make the decision, write it down, tell somebody, make the decision, and just commit to making the changes. And then in that process, you have got to know why. You've got to have a very powerful, strong reason that is compelling enough that when it gets hard and when you want to break these habits that you're building, that you can remember that and go back to it and try harder, because you're going to want to. I mean, it's true. And I don't think this is an area, sleep is probably almost an impossible area to completely do it right and control it, just because the way our lives work. There are going to be things that happen in the evening. Life happens. It's a little bit different than trying to probably work out every day and avoid Wonder Bread. This is probably a little bit more out of your control than some of those other changes that you make for your health. But a lot of it is in your control. And I know people who really stick to it. They say no to certain things because they have made this a priority, and that's something I've never done. So you got to have that why. You got to just write it down and commit to that. You have to know that and cling to it. And then the next thing would be you have to personalize all of this to you. If they if you're trying to make changes that are just too painful for you to live with, I mean, if if I were to say, if some expert said your bedtime should be 10 to 6, nobody's really going to do it quite like that. But if that was just, made you miserable, that's not something that's going to work for you. You have to take this advice and you have to personalize it for yourself. You have to know really and experiment and learn and explore on your own what would work for you, what you can live with forever, because that's really what you're trying to do. You're not trying to change your sleep habits for a week, a month, or a year. You're trying to, well, I am, I'm not telling you what to do, but I'm trying to change them permanently because I've realized how critical they are for my overall health, which is very important to me. So then the next step is you have to be patient. And this is something I did specifically read that, for example, exercise. They said how important it was and it would help you sleep better, but I read a few times that it took 3 months for you to really feel those benefits completely to get better sleep. That's a long time to wait. I used to give up, in a couple days if the scale didn't move, which was ridiculous. I learned to be patient. I learned that you have to trust. You did the research, you made the commitment, you have your why, you have to trust that the decision you made is right. And so you have to be patient because this may not work right away. You may do all of this and you're still not, you're still messing up or you're still failing. I did that for years and years. And I hope it doesn't take me years and years to implement this, but I expect that I'm going to screw up a lot before I actually improve. But I also know I will. I will do this because I have a why and I have committed. So anyway, be patient and trust. Then the next advice would be incremental in it. Don't look at all of this list and decide, all right, tomorrow night, it's time. I'm changing it all. That's a recipe for failure usually. I think everybody's personality is different, and I think there are people who are like cold turkey quitters and who can change their habits overnight. I've never been able to do that. If you can or not, but for the most part, what seems to work for most people is breaking it down into steps. So you pick one thing you can change. You pick the thing that would either be probably the easiest change to make or maybe the most impactful. So I actually haven't got to the point where I've determined that yet. So I can't share that with you. But for you, you have to decide that for yourself. You have to decide what step to take. And I can absolutely guarantee you I failed miserably in losing weight for a very long time because I wasn't doing that. And that is what changed things around for me. When I started seeing it in these small habits that I wasn't doing short term, that I was adopting for the rest of my life. My first one was drinking water. That sounds like, wow, okay, you started drinking water and you lost almost 50 pounds. That was more than 5 years ago and it worked. So it wasn't just drinking water, it was what happened after that, and it was breaking a Diet Coke addiction, and it was trying to eat a healthy breakfast. And so this is something that would probably work better if you take it in stages. Okay, and then actually that's it. Oh, one last thing. One last thing is get some support. I touched on it before, but you write it down for sure, and don't be afraid to tell people that you're trying to do this. I remember that I purposely didn't used to tell people what I was trying to accomplish with my goals because, man, you know what? I didn't want to have to be held accountable, I guess, straight up. I knew that if I were to tell Shane, especially the boys, that, hey, I'm trying to do this, I want to do this, that they would help hold me accountable. They would help me hold that because, the kids especially, you tell them and they don't forget, they remember. So when you're trying to make changes like this, don't be afraid, be brave, and tell somebody that you trust will help you with that goal. So for me, it would be, I mean, one of the most impactful things for me would be to ask people to kind of remind me, if I'm saying that I'm trying to go to bed at 11 o'clock, say that's what I pick, and then, I would say, hey, if you see me on Facebook, that's where I would ask for some help, and or if I told my husband, like, hey, don't let me have this phone in bed, I mean, he would hold me to that. So that's kind of that is a that's a scary thing, because that is a step and a sign of true commitment to be able to do that. So that's a huge one. So those are my tips, to take what the experts say to do to get better sleep and really use it to make those changes in your life. Thank you so much for listening. I really have enjoyed learning about this and sharing it, and I really hope that some of it's helpful. Hope it helped, and I will be wrapping up this whole sleep thing tomorrow, and it's going to be a fun one, because I have learned some pretty weird stuff, just some interesting facts. So tomorrow, that's what I'm doing. I'm just kind of, I'm not reviewing or summarizing. I'm just sharing some of the more interesting, weird stuff I learned about, just to finish it up. So have a great night. Go to bed unless, you're working the night shift. And thank you for listening. Take care.